and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. I have a beautiful picture up there for you. This is a photo of my desk at school. Maybe not today, but this is a picture. Why am I showing this to you? Well, tonight I'm going to talk to you about some of the organizational tips that I can tell you, and you might be asking, if somebody with a desk that looks like that, why might they be going live on Facebook to talk about organizational tips? And the thing I need to tell you is that I am not an organized person by nature, but there's certainly some things that I need to do with my life and with my environment in order to get the things done that I need to do. So tonight I'm calling this the organizational tips for teachers from a disorganized mess, as evidenced by my beautiful desk. And I also wanted to talk to you about this is because I know that there's more of you out there like me. And teaching is full of teachers who are very organized. And I think it attracts people that are quite organized. But if you are not somebody that is great with organization, then this might be some handy tips. And even if you are good with organization, maybe you need to reflect on the fact that you are really good and maybe things are going okay for you. Why am I talking about this tonight? Well, on the weekend, it was my daughter's birthday, and she's a bit of a mini me. And she is also disorganized as well as I am. And my mom was over, and she reminded me that I was exactly the same way as well. And I can function in life, and I can figure it out. And there's certainly some things that I do in order to make my life less chaotic, because being a teacher and being disorganized can be hard sometimes. And it made me reflect when my mom said that I've always been that way. And it reminded me of when I was in grade 1 and I wrote the very popular autobiography, I Have Nothing to Wear, which with significant help from our school librarian, I wrote a story about how my parents were frustrated with me every single morning because I was late for doing everything. Still a true story. And I was late for doing everything because I spent most of my mornings staring at my closet full of clothes, telling my parents that I wasn't ready on time because I had nothing to wear. So that was grade 1. Flash forward a little bit to high school, and I was on our high school student council, and one of the requirements was to take a leadership course. If you were part of student council, you had to take a leadership course, and you had to reflect on your strengths and areas of need. And of course, one of my areas of need was time management and organizational skills. So my final project was about learning more about how to stay organized and how to manage my time better. I made some improvements. I will be honest, I was much worse with my time management and organizational skills before that class. And I learned a lot about myself by taking those classes, and I still carry those lessons with me today as to strategies that if I am not going to be an in-the-moment, detailed person who has a great focus on time management, that there are definitely some things that I can do to focus on other areas where I am stronger in to help make my life just a little bit more manageable. So, some of my tips. My first one is to organize my environment. So, for one, I do a few things to organize my environment. So this comes down to my classroom as well as my household and other things in my life. I definitely want to make sure that if I'm a mess on the inside or feel like a mess on the inside, that at least my outside isn't always a disorganized mess. So it might not always be the tidiest, but at least it might not be, I have a system at least that I can focus on. The first thing I do in my classroom is I color code things. Now this just means when I color code things because when I look at them, I know where they belong and I know where they're grouped. So for me, I use the curriculum documents. So we have all of our curriculum documents here in Ontario have colors associated with them. Well, all of the notebooks in my classroom are also color coded to match. So that means that all of my language materials are yellow. All of my social studies materials are red. All my science is green, and all my math is blue. Now, I organize it that way on purpose because I know that, and that's notebooks and duotangs, and I will even color code my assessment pages according to those as well. So when I see that something is blue, I can quickly know that that's a math, or I can quickly know that that's a language. It also helps in the classroom because you're teaching little humans and they also struggle with disorganization, that you can say, pull out your yellow notebook is a lot easier if they know that all of their yellow things belong with language, all of their green things belong with science. It makes it just a little bit easier. Another thing I do is I label things. And I label all of the things. I label buckets. I label children. I have everything of theirs is labeled, and they have numbers that correspond to their placement on my class list, because it certainly helps me keep my assessment organized. And I make sure that all my bins have labels, because then I know. It's more, I think for me sometimes, it's more so that I know where things go back and that I have some accountability in where things go back. My children's dresser drawers are labeled so that they know where their clothes get put back. And that has helped, especially when they're all three of them are just like me too. The other thing I do is have a place for clutter. So this is something that helps me to manage sometimes the clutter that happens in the classroom. So one of the things that overwhelms me more than anything is paper. And I know I've talked about this before, but papers and extra papers and papers that really I don't know what to do with all day long. So I have bins in my classroom that are the extra paper bins. And this bin is often right next to the chair that I have at the front of the carpet. And this extra paper bin is where if I photocopy 35 copies of something and I only have 30 students, then I have 4 extra copies of things. And inevitably 1 or 10 or 25 of my students will misplace their work. And when this happens, when somebody misplaces their work, what I can end up doing is I can take that clutter or take those extra papers and I just drop them all in this extra papers bin. That means if somebody misplaces their work, they go get it from the extra papers bin. If I photocopy something and then don't end up using it, which happens a lot, I will photocopy something thinking I'm going to have time for it in a lesson, but I don't. It gets dropped in the extra papers bin. Everything gets dropped in this big bin until it's full, and then I'll go through it, and often I'll ask some of my students to help me go through it. And if they're class sets, I'll keep them and put them in my filing cabinet, which is also color coded and organized into subjects, because I'm a disorganized mess and I need to keep it that way. And then all of my extra papers go in there. So this might seem like it's highly organized. And I try to do that because I've learned what my faults are and where I have deficits. And I can try to compensate for those for things like labeling. So again, if the inside of my brain is a mess, or the day-to-day, which is really where I struggle, is the day-to-day organization of things and moment to moment, not the big picture stuff, but the moment to moment ideas of how I'm going to organize things moment to moment. If I have places I can put it and then I can go back to it and have a time where I dedicate to those, then I find it a lot easier to manage. So managing and organizing my environment is really important. I will sit through this summer and plan where things are going to go. In September, I will actually be moving classrooms and I will be in a different classroom come September. So this is great because it means I get to redecorate, which is something I absolutely love doing. And I get to investigate a different space and figure out how to use my things differently. But it also means that there's going to be a significant amount of time planning how I'm going to organize things, because my storage will be different. Right now I have closed storage. Next year I will have open storage. So that means that all of my messy cupboards, if they're a little bit cluttered, I can't just close the cupboard door. So I'm really going to have to be thinking through that, because I do need to have an organized environment so that I can function day to day. Another thing that I will often use is timers. This is a screenshot of my phone. So we have to do attendance every day. My attendance should be done at 9:10 every morning. One of the things that I use is, well, there's two things. One is music and the second is timers. Music for transition, and I set them to timers on my phone. If something is happening at the same time every day, I might not remember to do it. Might is a very strong word. I will not remember to do it. So I need to set myself timers throughout the day to make sure that I remember how to do those things. So for instance, I have an iPhone and this is my timer. So you can now, I have it repeated. So every Monday to Friday, it rings at 9:10. The label that shows up on my screen says, do your attendance. So it doesn't just say alarm, it tells me what I'm supposed to do when that alarm goes off. And I can actually set the sound to a song that's in my Apple library. So I happen to have Work by Rihanna, except the one that I play in school is not the Rihanna version. I use the Kids Bop version one, but it reminds me that it is time to do my attendance. Now my students are so used to hearing this song because they hear it every single day at 9:10. Number one is that it goes off and they hear the song, and inevitably the kids that sit closest to my desk and my purse where my phone is sitting go, Mrs. Firth, it's time for you to do your attendance. And they know exactly what that means. And they tell me that they're annoyed by the song, but my attendance has been in almost every single day because this alarm goes off. I also use other songs at the end of the day to signal cleaning up. So I use the peanut butter jelly time. Now, I often will teach not just my class at the end of the day, but I have some coverage classes that I teach. One class in particular were not very good at cleaning up, so I quickly started playing this song. It's the same song I play for my own kids when it's time for them to tidy up, and I now play it to the point where I've played it maybe 5 or 7 times. After about the 7th time I played it, and I only see them about once a week. And their classroom teacher started doing it too, that the minute the song comes on, they just know what it means. They know it's time to clean up. They know they have jobs to do, to put things away at the end of the day, and they just get up and start doing it. The song is 3 minutes long. It almost makes you want to dance. It's the one on Apple Music. It's called Peanut Butter Jelly Time, and I can add a link. If I can figure out how to do it, I can add a link to it. But now my students are doing it too, where I play the song. They know they have 3.5 minutes to get those areas cleaned up and be ready to go by the end of that song. It's great that it can go off. I haven't actually set it up to go off at 3 o'clock. As I was writing out what I was going to talk about tonight, I was like, why don't I set that one up as a timer too? Right now, I just simply press play at 3 o'clock every day for the days that I'm there. And I saw you put up in the comments that you don't peg me as a disorganized person. I pretend really well. I do. I've learned enough compensation strategies to cover my trail. But if you work with me, in fact, the teacher across the hall will often say that she has to come and tell me what's happening every day because I won't remember all the things. Again, it's not the big picture things, it's the day-to-day detail stuff. Even my husband will notice it. If we're cleaning the house, I will gather up all of the garbage and put it in a garbage bag and then just leave the garbage bag. I'll forget to throw it out. I'll forget to finish it off. It's the day-to-day minute tasks that I find really, really difficult. See, I knew there was more people out there like me, Kathy. It wasn't just me. So here's what I'm doing to pretend so that you can also pretend to be be an organized person just like me. You just put systems in place that help you function as a grown-up human being. The other thing I've talked about many times before is lists. I use lists when I'm overwhelmed. I use lists when I need to figure out what I need to do. It's because I'm a planner. I love planning and having things ready to go. Because I love planning, lists help me to plan. It also makes sure that I have things that I need to do. So if there's a to-do list, if I have certain things that I need to get done, I will put them in a list. I may not put them in a calendar, but I will put them in a list. In fact, I know that there's different events coming up. And I think one of the problems that I often have is I know all of the things that I have to do. I don't necessarily associate those with a day of the week or the fact that it's like Tuesday, and that thing that I knew was supposed to happen actually is happening today. And I think it's that disconnect. I know all of the things that are coming up. I just don't necessarily associate them with the day and what day it is, and that it's actually happening today. Again, I'm up in the clouds in the big picture, not really focused on some of those details. So timers and lists. The other thing is routine. If I need something done, I really need to focus on a routine. So I do set up my life and my environment to try to focus on routine. So on Tuesdays, I go to the gym. On Mondays, I go live. Even though there's a Raptors game upstairs going on that I absolutely want to go watch, I'm going to get there, but this is part of my routine. So I do it because I need to get it done. And I actually love coming on here every Monday and sharing different things and hearing all of your feedback that you send me as well. So I make sure that something, if it's important to do, that it's part of my routine. So that way I don't have to remember to change my day, that it's just something that happens. I don't have to remember that the gym is on Tuesdays. I just go to the gym on Tuesdays. It's every Tuesday. So some of the things that I do to do that is I make schedules and lists. This is my agenda. So I do not redo an agenda every day. I post the weekly agenda up on the board and it doesn't change. You'll also, this year I have a lot of language at the beginning of the day just because my schedule had that. I actually don't like language at the beginning of the day, and I prefer math at the end of the day. But when I'm making my schedule, I try to keep it consistent so that each subject is happening roughly around the same time. It helps me to remember what comes first just because I have that up. This sits right above my messy desk so that I can see it, but also that students can see it, and they will check it. I will change it if we've got something special happening, but this is typically my schedule for the week. That is my agenda, and I find it so much easier because then I don't have to remember in the morning to change the schedule. It's just up and it stays there, and if nothing special is happening, I don't have to make any changes, which means there's far less work. Another thing I do in the morning to help me so I don't have to necessarily add more things to my routine is I have a student who changes the date on my calendar every day. So she comes in and that's what she does when she walks in, is she comes in and she changes the date. I have the monthly calendar up, but I don't necessarily have the day written down. So she will come in and write it. It's something she has lovely penmanship, and it's something she's really enjoyed doing this year and has asked to do it. So she has taken on that task. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next year. I'm going to have to find a new student in order to do that for me, but that is something else. The next thing I do is I really rely really heavily on this phone, and I use tech, and I use all of my programs and everything is in the cloud. So when I say that, I'm talking about Dropbox and Google Drive. Absolutely every file I create, I make, I have, I buy, everything is saved to either Dropbox. So with tech in the cloud, I'm using Dropbox and Google Drive. So a lot of my student activities, so things that I have between my students and I, will use Google Drive because that's what they have. But all of my files are on Dropbox. Now, the best benefit of that is because I am going between multiple pieces of tech. So I have an iPad, I have an iPad provided by the school, I have my phone, I have my laptop, and I also have my watch as well. All of that tech means that when I use Dropbox or Google Drive, everything is accessible no matter where I am. So I literally can't forget things. I have access to all of my files all of the time. So it doesn't matter if I don't have access to a laptop or if something is saved on my home computer. Nothing really is saved on my computer that isn't accessible through a cloud service. So if I forget to save it to Dropbox or Google Drive, and those are generally my computer as my default save space is my Dropbox account, and I have huge storage on there because I have a lot of files. If you've ever seen my desktop, the amount of windows is only a small portion of the amount of files I have in my Dropbox. But my Dropbox contains everything I need. And the best part is that I can access all of my Dropbox files on my phone. So because they're in either Keynote or they're Adobe PDF, I can access every single one of them on my phone. So if I can't get to something on my computer, I can pull it up on my phone. If I forget something and I don't just want to pull it up on my computer, I can look at it on my school iPad, which is really, really helpful. My watch is also very helpful because it's tied to my phone. I can see emails as they're coming in, so I can quickly assess if it's something I need to either deal with right now or put off later. So I really like the fact that I don't actually have to carry my phone to be able to see emails. I just have to make sure that those emails are actually coming into my watch and that my watch is plugged in, but I can see all of those things. So I don't need to be tied to my laptop. My files are accessible anywhere. So when I inevitably forget something, I can access it really quickly. I also have set it up in my classroom so that I can print using Google Cloud Print. So we have the school printer happens to live in my classroom. All I've done is attach it to my laptop that the school board provided to run my smart board, and it's attached to the school printer, and I've set up Google Cloud Print. Now this means that I can print from any device that is signed into my Google account. So if I've forgotten everything and everything is dead, I can still access all of my files from any connected device to the internet by signing into my Google account or signing into my Dropbox account, and I can print from any device. It doesn't even matter if it's mine. I just need to remember my password to sign in, which sometimes doesn't happen. The other thing I do is I'm also taking photos of important things and storing them in my photos so that I can go back and access them and see them, or using the search feature on my email. So if I have everything in my hand or in my pocket, then I know that even when I inevitably forget something, I have access to all of the information that I need. So I don't know what's going on, but I have access to know what's going on. So I just have to take the time to look. And because I like to plan, and I've talked about that, so I'll not talk too much about that, but because I like to plan things out far in advance and know what's happening. I like to plan out some of the details, even though the follow through on my end or getting day to day might not be so great. I at least like to have a plan. I like to know what's coming up. I don't like to be surprised by things, except right in the morning when I have no idea what's happening next. But long term, I don't like to be surprised. So I do like to plan. So I plan out my units. I plan out my long range plans. I look at my lesson plans. They're well planned out. They're planned Sunday night before I do anything else. I have well planned. And finally, it's relying on a support system. This has been key. Many, many teachers are really good at organization and day-to-day time management. That might not be me. And what I have found as I get older and as I am in this career for longer and as I have more experience, one of the things that I've learned is when I can acknowledge my shortcomings and the things I'm not good at, and I'm really honest with the people around me that have to work with me day to day, what I'm not good at, but what I am good at too, and sharing and trading off. So when it comes to getting something done around the school, not trying to do everything myself, but to say, okay, I'm really good at this part, so why don't I do that? But you're really good at that, so can you help me there? And that is something that I have found really, really helpful. When you own who you are and you own your shortfalls, I think is a better word. When you own where your weaknesses are and you make it really apparent to others that you know where you're strong and where you're weak, and you're able to ask for help to compensate for some of those areas that you're weaker, people will step up and help you because you know what? Chances are that your strengths might be their weaknesses. Where we often become stressed out or we become overwhelmed is when we try to do too much or have the expectation that we need to be perfect and that we're not allowed to have faults. Teachers are often held to a really high standard that you can't make mistakes and you have to know everything and you have to be perfect because you're shaping the minds of little children. Well, it's impossible and we can't be perfect. And we can just be who we are. And when we tell people that who we are is flawed and that we have strengths and weaknesses and we're working on it and we're figuring out ways that we can deal with those strengths and weaknesses. Number one, we are modeling for kids that the standard is not perfection. Number two, we're modeling resilience, that we can overcome some of those shortcomings and figure out how to function when you're not so good at things, that you can put systems in place that can help you overcome those things. And I think that's really important, is to identify those weaknesses and ask for support. Find your yin to your yang. Figure out who around you can help to be a well-balanced person, because maybe you are not a whole person. You can't do everything all together, but as a team, you can accomplish way more. So I am always forever thankful to my wonderful teaching partners who help to tell me what's going on every day, because I'm not sure whether it's day 4 or day 2, or if we have an assembly on Wednesday or if we have an assembly next week. And to those people that have ever helped me to stay organized, I say thank you very much. And I hope I have helped you as much as you have helped me. So, what are some of the things that you do to keep yourself organized and keep it all together every single day? Are you a super organized person? Share your tips and strategies. Or are you like me and maybe there's something you need to work on and you're just looking for tips, or you've got questions? Drop them in the comments and let's be that team together and help to support one another at figuring out how to be the best versions of ourselves. So thank you very much for watching, and I'm going to head upstairs because you know what? Go Raptors, go. Bye, everybody. See you next week.